Perfect. All right. Friends are getting on. We've got people coming in person. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for taking time today. Please let me know if you can't hear at any point in time. We have a group in live, and then we have a lot of people registered to show up today. And then we're also going to record and put it on YouTube. So for anyone who was unable to join us, that they can pick up later. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Shambi Polychronis. I am the president of the Utah Council for Exceptional Children. And we are so excited to have so many people here today. And we are very grateful for our partnership with the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities. And we want to provide some really good training for folks to get ready to move into our legislative reception. All right. Whatever reason, I cannot forward the slide. Just a second, we'll get started. But as we're doing this, tonight we're going to be talking about educator shortages, mental health, and professional language. We're going to help you tell your story. Oh, we're just going to put forward. Okay. We're going to help you learn to tell your story. That's going to be a great grad for you to work with legislators and people that are showing up in person. And then we want to also give you an idea of what to expect when we all meet up at the Capitol. So with that, I'm going to introduce Amy and Mallory today. So Dr. Mallory Poole is online with us. And Amy, if you'll come up as well, and you can take over for me. I'm going to show her really quickly. So advance the slide, you're just going to roll up instead of using the arrows. Yes, I'll be visitors.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm kind of representing both me and Mallory today. So Mallory, if you feel free to jump in at any point too. I know that she's honestly more of an expert than I am related to these bills. So yeah, feel free to do that. But I'm excited to be here. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm covering the educator shortages portion of this. Okay. Hold on a second. Trying to get it to scroll. There we go. Okay, so for educator shortages, there's one main there's three different bills that we put on here to discuss today. One of them is really related to, teacher shortages. The other two have to do with education, but not necessarily only teachers or teacher shortages. So we are asking today to look at these bills and to make sure you understand them and you're informed before the legislative session. So there's three bills that we're asking you to think about and consider here. So one is the HB 204. This has to do with a grant program that's being proposed to support future educators, so those who are going to attend school. This will address, the teacher shortage and retention issues that we're seeing here in Utah. We also are going to talk about the HB 267 union bill that's being largely discussed right now. And we're also discussing HB 102, the bill that has to do with class size reduction. So we'll go through each of those. So right now, you're just looking at a brief, a small little graph. Basically what this is showing is it's just showing the issue with teacher shortage right now. We're finding that in special education specifically, that within the first 5 years, many new teachers, so teachers who are just beginning their career, are exiting quickly. So you'll see that the percentage is higher at the end of year one of teachers exiting. So it's really important, as you see this first bill that we had talked about teacher shortage and the grant, we're hoping can help with some of this retention issue. There's teacher shortages that we're finding, right? Not just Utah, there's other states that are having this issue, but specifically in specific areas of education, there's a bigger, greater issue. So they're finding in rural areas, maybe specific subjects like math, and then special education. So there's more than one reason why we're having teacher shortages in that issue. But one of the big contributors, a couple of contributors are there's just a lack of quality teacher preparation and the wages. So this bill that contributes to providing funding for future educators can help with, offset some of those issues. Sorry, we're letting a couple more people in. I'm excited to have more people join us. So for those of you who just joined, we're talking about educator shortages in Utah and the bills that are affecting that. And we're just trying to move on to the next slide. I think it takes a second for it to think while it's moving here. Maybe. Quick. Let's try that.
Click outside.
Sorry, hold on one second. We're trying to move on to the next slide. Oh, there we go. It worked this time. This is just another visual for you to understand the turnover and the issue we're having with teacher shortages. So this is just basically another graphic to show you in a different way that beginning teachers are leaving. And Utah, this was put out by the Utah State Board of Education. So this is not necessarily specifically addressed by, the first bill that we talked about where they're providing funding for special education teachers, except for hopefully by supporting them in gaining an education and bringing them to this field, we can hopefully find those who, will be willing to get a qualified education. Qualification for Utah teachers in this scenario, in the image you're looking at, is really related to teachers having, licensure, special professional licenses, because there are teachers, right, that can be hired without licenses in certain settings. So this is really important, having a good, high quality teachers in the field. So to just address and make this even more apparent to you guys, there are some different percentages and studies that have been done about the different issues that we're having here. So some of these are 61% of new teachers. As you just saw in the graphics that we saw, remained in teaching. Sorry, I'm just moving so that this will go here so I can see. Okay, remained in teaching after 5 years. We'd like that to be more. 690 special education teachers leave within 5 years, and that's a 3% loss of Utah's total education workforce, which definitely impacts the students. NCES press release from October 17 stated that nationwide, 74% of public elementary middle schools reported difficulty filling special education vacancies with a certified teacher. So this is a problem. When teachers leave mid-year, students lose about 54 instructional days. So that's 30% of Utah school years. So you can see that can make a large difference for our students. So there's just a little quote that Mallory had found that's a quote from a current Utah elementary principal that says, "It's really important that you're protecting your special education teachers because they're carrying the whole school." And for those of you who work in special education, understand that. So I'm just going to briefly mention these two other bills. HB 267, like I mentioned, is the union bill. This is a really big hot topic that many of you have probably heard of right now. So this bill has actually already passed the House. It's now and passed the Senate committee. So it is to the Senate, but it's still really important to think about how this might affect, it affects multiple people, not just teachers, firefighters, police officers, but it can affect teachers. So currently, in Utah, Granite School District and Salt Lake School District have teachers in the union. So those are currently being affected by this bill. So just so those of you who don't know, right, teacher unions aren't required. School districts are not required to negotiate with teacher unions, and teachers can choose to be a part of this. So educators should continue, we believe, to have the right to join or not join the union, and should have the right to negotiate for their jobs. So basically what this bill proposes is that it opposes unions, right, by removing certain labor negotiations. So they won't be allowed to possibly negotiate for salaries or benefits. And so those are important things to think about how that might affect those teachers. The class size reduction bill is just basically a reappropriation of funds. So the funds are already there and already being used in schools right now to hopefully, get class sizes down. But right now it's the funding is used for K through 8th grade. But what this bill is proposing is that instead of it going from K through 8, it's going to basically go through just K through 3rd grade, so kindergarten through 3rd grade. And so that means that grades 4 through 8 would not have smaller class sizes, or at least not have funds to help try to support having small class sizes. And so those classes would more than likely be quite large, right, in those grades above. So this can be an issue. I encourage you to look at these initiatives a little bit more and read a little bit more about them. The main goal, I think, today is, just as I sum up here, that you feel comfortable knowing how to address these bills with your legislature and those who are important to talk to. So I have just a couple of examples. It doesn't have to be difficult, but I know if you've never done that before, it can be a little bit challenging. So I wrote a couple of example statements that you might be able to say about these bills. Granted, you having your own thoughts and whether you support or not. But for supporting teacher grants for that first bill, something you might be able to say is something as simple as, I support, these initiatives that provide grants and funding to help recruit and retain high quality educators in Utah, right? That I care about and invest in these teachers and the support and to help maintain, right, a strong workforce, because that impacts the children care. Something you might want to say if you maybe have concerns about the union. I believe teachers should have a voice in advocating for the working conditions and salaries and benefits. And also for the class size reduction, it's important to ask about what limiting K through 3, to the funding to kindergarten through 3rd grade instead of kindergarten through 8th grade, what that might do to those larger classes. Are they going to be manageable? What's going to happen to the upper elementary and middle school, and how are they going to, support the student success? So I think I'm going to pass. There we go. I'm going to pass to the next slide, I think, Camilo. And I believe we talked about, if you have questions, write them down, make sure you don't forget them. But I think we're going to address the questions at the end after we go through these.
Hello, everyone. My name is Camilo Gomez. I am the Vice President for Utah CDC. And I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about our mental health and what our what are we asking for our Utah State legislators? Now, of course, as we are going to go talk to our legislators, we have to also make sure that we are bringing in information so that we can be those experts. Okay. And so first I want to show you just some data and statistics about what mental health is in our schools and how is it affecting our students. So this is a study that was taken in 2023. And in this study, 73% of Utah school students felt sad or hopeless. 22% said felt seriously or that were seriously considered attempting suicide. And about 18% made a suicide attempt, and 9% attempted suicide one or more times, and 3.2% had suicide attempts that required medical attention. So these are obviously shocking numbers. And so if we're able to bring these numbers to our state legislators, it will give them some data points that they can then make a decision on what they want to do with our legislation. All right. Here is another just statistic or way to look at it. If you want to, you can go ahead and take a picture of this and show this because it shows a great representation about how this is affecting our schools. With this, we also want to make sure that we are sharing success stories because it is not great for us to go to our legislators and just tell the doom and gloom and saying, well, everything is terrible in education and we should just, we need more funding. That's not necessarily how we should approach it. Whenever we talk to legislators, we want to think about how we're able to build those relationships and how we're able to say, hey, we've had success in the past, and this is how we can have success in the future. And so I just wanted to share this a little bit. In one of our rural schools, we had some great success. For girls, about 40% over the past 4 years. So this school district has gone from 1 suicide in 5 attempts to 0 suicides and 0 attempts with great funding and being able to access and give students the mental health that they need or the mental health services that they need. All right. So one of the great things to do when we're sharing mental health is to tell stories. Now, it's one thing to have data and share that data. However, if you have a personal story of a student that has been impacted by mental health, it'll draw that attention and it will show it'll just give more meaning to the context of mental health. One thing we got to be mindful is with student privacy is to not use any identifying information. So make sure to leave out any names or addresses or any revealing characteristics. Also, keep it brief. Our legislators are very busy, and at this event, they're going to be bombarded with stories. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping it brief, but impactful. So I do have an example of a good story that I have myself. About 2 years ago, I had a student who experienced some extreme trauma. Within 2 months, she lost her father. And then 2 months later, her brother and her brother's newborn died in an accident. So she lost 3 family members in 2 months. Obviously, this brought a lot of trauma to her. And with this trauma, she didn't feel like it was safe to go to school. She wanted to be around her family members because she lost 3 in 2 months. So she didn't want to leave her mom. And with this, it impacted her education. She missed about 2/3 of the school year just because she did not want to leave her home and want to leave her family. Now, at the time, my school didn't have a school social worker, so we couldn't be able to provide services to her. And her financial situation really didn't give her the option to actually go to mental health services outside of school. So there really wasn't a solution that we could give her. Now, of course, our school is very fortunate that we do have a social worker now and we can work on situations like this, but it wasn't really available to her at that time. And that's just one example, okay? If you want to, you can think about it ahead of time and make sure just to get something prepared that is ready to go so you can give that impact. One legislation that we do want to support is Senate Bill 141. Now, this is a senator who will actually be who will be here. It's Kathleen Reed. She always attends this event. And so you will most likely see her, congratulate her and say, hey, I really like this bill. And we're trying to get other people to support this bill. And ultimately what this bill does, it adds the Office of Student Health Affairs in the Department of Health and Services. And this bill adds three things: physical wellness services, mental health services, and a programs for managing chronic health conditions. And from what I understand from the bill is that it's trying to look at how we can support services inside the.
Sorry, can I interrupt? What was her name? The senator's name?
Kathleen Reed.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so this bill is great because it will allow for more services within schools. As we're thinking, or as I think it's been in the last 5 years, we've had billions of dollars removed from our education system. And of course, some of the things that might be hit are mental health and electives. I know, at least from my school, a lot of our electives, and we're looking at funding. It's not great. And so we want to make sure that there's still avenues for our students to receive mental health services. All right. And with this, we also just want to share some mental health resources. I have them here on the page. We will also have a copy of this slide. So if you want to use some of these links, you can. And it's just a really great way for, if you do find yourself with a student that has mental health, these are some really great resources for them to be for access. All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to professional language.
Saving my best for last. All right. So this first slide is just talking about some basic definitions and why professional language is so important. So professional language is words used in federal law and best practices related to education. So this language creates safe and equitable environments in schools, fostering respect, understanding, sensitivity, all those great things. And professional terms have specific recognized meanings among members in the field, and misuse of this language can harm people in professionals in special education, medicine, commerce, labor, and social services. So it doesn't just affect education, it has a broad reaching impact across different disciplines and professions. And eliminating this professional language is harmful and counterproductive to everyone involved.
Ryan.
Sorry. And I think a part of this is what we need to specify. A lot of this professional language has already been taken away or been kind of distorted in the field, and we need to inform our legislators that it is causing harm to students and their families as well as teachers. Oh gosh. Okay. So we just have a couple of terms that we're going to clarify here. So
Ryan.
First one is
Please take her out. Just take her out one more time, please.
yeah, if everyone could just make sure that their mic is muted, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so the first term, this one is definitely a hot button term right now. The first term is diversity. We as special educators work within diversity all of the time. As we know, all of our kids have varying degrees of strengths, weaknesses, and things they need to work on. And our kids are about as diverse as it comes. And we are required by law, by IDEA and other laws that to require to provide a free and appropriate public education to every single student and address their diverse needs. Diversity is kind of most commonly aligned with social markers of identity, but it is also essential to include it as a term for inclusive ability. That came out sounding really weird. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. Anyway, okay, the next one is equity. So IGPA has 3 requirements for equity: disproportionate representation, significant discrepancy, and significant disproportionality. So I hate how these words are pronounced. Okay, disproportionate representation is just the percentage of disproportionate representation, I don't know why I put that in there twice, of racial and ethnic groups in special education or related services. So are we putting more kids into special education and related services who come from minority, racial, or ethnic groups? The next one is significant disparities. So that's data for districts to determine if they have significant disparities, basically with policies and procedures surrounding like child crime or discipline. And significant disproportionality is just a methodology to determine the identification, placement, or discipline of students with disability based on race or ethnicity. If there's significantly more students from minority races or ethnicities being disciplined or placed into special education. So these are just things to keep in mind to make sure that we're not disproportionately classifying minority students into special education, because that has long reaching impacts. Let's get slides now. Okay. The next word is inclusion. In special education, you know that this is supporting students with disabilities so they can access general education curriculum and extracurriculars with their same peers and be held to the same high expectations as their peers. Transition. This is a very another hot topic word that can get misused a lot. And in education, transition is a coordinated set of activities for a child or a student focused on improving academic and functional achievement, specifically moving from school to post-school activities, so college or career. It's based on individual needs, includes instruction, related services, community experience, and development of adult living experiences and objectives. Currently, there are no specific bills that we are asking people to support or oppose, just supporting our legislators to support and bring back use of these professional terms such as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that's it for me.
Hi there. I'm Audrey Robbins, and I am a board member for this Council for Exceptional Children. And I will be talking to you a little bit about how to tell your story to sort of bring to life all of these legislative acts. I learned a new, very fancy word called narrative advocacy to label what it is that we're doing. And there's a why to narrative advocacy. First of all, it's persuasive, and it helps to persuade your audience, which in this case is lawmakers. But in addition, you have to remember that typically lawmakers depend on their staff really to get information about the bills that they're deciding. And so when you're talking about people whose job it is to review your opinion, we really should be taking advantage of that. To number 2, provide context for these really wordy, sort of formal language bills. It roots it in real life for folks. And then thirdly, conveys your values. It explains to people on the Hill what it is you find important, and hopefully they will then find it important as well. For our next little bit on narrative advocacy, Shanna, are you there on Zoom? Present that.
Yep, I'm here.
Yay, hi Shanna.
Hello.
I'll advance to your slide and I'll stay here in case you need anything.
Perfect.
Here's my references if anybody needs more information. There's Janice's slide.
Awesome. Guys, this is my favorite thing. I love it. And I wish I was there in person, but I had some meetings after school, so I couldn't make it in time. So I love to go to Washington, D.C. and talk to our elected officials. And then I've been doing a lot of talking and advocating with our local officials as well. One of my favorite things to do is just talk to them about how they feel about the bills that they're thinking about, and then engage in a conversation about why I would feel a certain way. And it's not that we have to argue about it, right? I just want them to understand what my experiences may lead to the conversation as well. So here are some steps for sharing your story. First, be clear and focused. So like Camilo said earlier, you just don't have a lot of time and they're very busy. So just get straight to the point and let them know in a kind way, right? How you're feeling and experiences. Be concise. So keep your story to the point and share necessary details. Show the human side of the issue. And on this one, I want to talk really quick about an experience we had in DC a couple years ago. I took my high school age daughter, she was 18, well, almost 18, 17, with me to DC to advocate for students with disabilities. And we were talking about the teacher shortage. And she just spoke right up and shared with everybody how the teacher shortage had personally impacted her in her schooling. In a class that she was taking, they lost the teacher. The teacher no longer taught the class. It was a highly well-attended AP class that honestly had an incredible pass rate on the AP test. And the students were then told, maybe just don't take the test. And so then, that was super deflating to them, but also it caused them to incur some costs that they wouldn't have had to, aside from that. But it was really so fun to watch how impactful sharing that story was on the people that listened to it, because they heard in real time how shortages were affecting this kiddo that was in school. And they were very, what word do I want to say? They were attentive to what she was saying and they were interested in it. And so if you can show that human side of the issue and connect it to policy, you'll make a big impact. Be respectful and professional. It's hard when you're advocating and you're passionate about something to remember that, we all have different agreement points. We all agree and disagree on different things. So remember to be respectful and professional when you're speaking with them. Provide actionable suggestions. So I noticed that when we went to DC and when I talked to my representatives here, that sometimes we just say a lot of the things that maybe need to be fixed, right? We can see, because we're doing this every day, things that need to be fixed. But again, it sounds kind of heavy. And so if you can just think of, these are some things that I think you could do to make this issue more manageable for us. And then that gives them a starting point. Use multiple channels. So a lot of our representatives have text access now, and you can text them really quickly. They have email access. They have, you can have face-to-face meetings. There's town hall meetings you can go to. There are many ways to connect with your representatives, and it's a good idea to use them. And then after you meet with your representative, send a follow-up letter. Hey, I really enjoyed talking to you about these things, and this is, how I feel, and I'd love to be an asset to you in the future. So if you want to reach out to me, if you ever have questions about legislation, I'd love to be that connection for you. So make sure you thank them for their time as well. So those are my comments. Have so much fun. I love this. It's so great.
Thank you for that, Shanna. I think now is the time to open it up for questions. So if anybody online has a question, feel free to unmute or drop something in the chat. Anybody in person have a question? Give it some good wait time.
I have a question. Sorry, Audrey. Sorry to wait for the last minute. Are there any tips on professionalism when attending this event up at Capitol Hill? Any suggestions on how to dress? Things like that?
Anyone want to tackle that, or should I go for it?
You go for it, Audrey.
All right. I mean, I would say as far as stress, anything that you would wear in the classroom would be appropriate. So I would go with that. You're going to be taken more seriously, of course, if you're not wearing pajamas and, your hair's a mess. And as far as being professional, I would say this is a difficult one for me, but like Shanna said, trying not to be emotional. When you get emotional, that takes the focus of the conversation, and often your message gets a little lost. Anything to add?
Are you
able to hear me?
Oh, yes. Hey, Mallory.
Hi, that's a great question. I wanted to just mention that this is a public event, and so you'll see people dressed in very fancy business, and then you'll also see people not as professional, but I would agree with the recommendation. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to be present yourself in a way that you appear as though you are informed. And it's at the end of a long day for all of the different legislators. And so some energy coming with positivity is another really positive thing that can contribute to sharing your message. So
Thanks for that, Mallory. Anybody have anything to add or another question?
A reminder.
Okay, Shammy's got a reminder.
Can we remind the group about not over talking? Are we doing that?
Shammy's getting ahead of All right, so let's move forward. The official title for what we're doing on Monday is Disability on the Hill Day. That's on Monday, February 3rd. It starts at 4:30 p.m. It will be a reception, so don't expect to come in and sit down at a table. It'll be kind of mix and mingle. And this event has historically been hosted by the Legislative Coalition of People with Disabilities. A lot of us just call it LCPD. This year, we're co-sponsoring the event with them. And we just want to really emphasize that we're attending in an advocacy role. So be really mindful of prioritizing those folks that are in the disability community and give them plenty of opportunities to self-advocate. That's just something that I think is really important for us to remember. As far as expectations of what will happen, oops, Mallory's back. Hey, Mallory.
Sorry, I was just going to say, along with that, you guys received your email of the outline of a letter. Personally connect with all of your representatives and senators and say, hey, I'm your constituent. I'm going to be here. Please make an effort to attend. When you use that keyword of constituent and your presence, you're going to then, all of our legislators are invited to this reception, and there's some food there for them. But again, it's at the end of a long day. And so you want to make the effort to personalize the invitation for them. So please reach out.
Thank you, Mallory. Definitely make sure that you register if you have not done that yet. We're keeping close track of who's going to be there, and we really appreciate that a lot. Remember, it's in your email. It's been sent out several times the last few days from the Utah CDC. There is plenty of free parking over on the east side of the Capitol. If you're like me and you have no idea which side is the east side, just go around the Capitol. It's a circle and park where there's an open spot. That's my advice. It's super easy. I really can't find my way out of a box, and I've been to the Capitol. You'll need to go through security to access the rotunda. I looked up exactly what that means, and basically they'll check you through a metal detector. Interestingly, you're allowed to bring a gun, so I don't know what they're looking for, but yeah, you'll have to go through security, and just kind of be aware of your surroundings and what's going on, and be real patient when you're trying to talk to the legislators, because there's only a few of them, and hopefully a lot of us. So there will be a crowd around them, and you'll kind of have to wait your turn and remember that caution to be a good advocate as well. So thank you for participating. We really appreciate your time. We know that it's difficult to fit these things into a busy day, busy week. But we want you to remember that your voice matters. We hope that you found this training informative and that you'll now take action by telling your elected officials how you feel. And it can be in any format: snail mail, email, text, social media post, opinion article, phone call, or in person. And remember that this is what democracy and advocacy looks like. Thank you. Ben?
I'll make a comment.
Of course. Do you want to come up to the microphone? Ben Tillotson is here, ready to speak to us.
Hey guys, so kind of to the point of if you have a lot of emotions or you have a lot of things that you want to say and you have a limited time with your representatives, one thing you can do, which was shared here, is after you've met with them and you've gotten really the meat of your message, then follow up with them and say, hey, it was so nice to meet you at this event. Let me tell you more about my story, right? That's where you can start to elaborate maybe on your experiences, because they're staffers, they read through those things, and those are those longer stories, and that's a more appropriate way to share those stories. And so really, as you prepare for this, think of what is the meat message that you want to get across to share with them.
Thank you, Ben. Last chance for any questions or comments from the audience.
I have one more thing I thought of. Make sure you watch these bills and thank the people for their vote in the way that we had hoped that they had voted. They often hear a lot of negative comments, right? And so it's nice to hear some nice things like, we really appreciate your work for us and we really appreciate what you're doing in your capacity. So
I like that. That's good advice, Jen. Thank you.
Remind people one more time what time we want to meet up and that we want name tags, so folks.
Oh, sure. So as you get to the Capitol, come to the rotunda, look for a table where you'll be able to collect a name tag that will identify you as part of the CEC, and do that, I guess, shortly before 4:30. Plan to be there 4:20 to 4:30, just so that, we have those numbers to make everybody realize that we're serious. Love it. Well, thanks again, and I'll let everybody go. If anybody has any lingering questions you want to ask as we end the Zoom, then feel free to hop on your camera and turn off your view. Thanks again. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.